Welcome everyone. Welcome everyone. Welcome everyone to another Ref Brandon and the Todd family YouTube video. Wherever you are, whatever you may be doing, thank you so much for making Ref Brandon and the Todd family a part of your day. We always greatly appreciate it. It's been a really fun week if you're a college football fan, because this is the time of the year where a lot of the smaller teams in the smaller conferences start playing the midweek games to allow all of their players a chance to be on national television. So there were, I believe, 3 games on Tuesday night, and I think there was 3 games Wednesday night, and then there was 1 game last night, and then there's 2 more big-time games coming up tonight, and then, of course, tomorrow is another all-day Saturday in the world of college football. We'll talk about that coming up here in just a minute. But first, I want to go ahead and give my few quick thoughts on the college football playoff poll, which came out on Tuesday night. Not really much to say about it. Alabama is extremely overrated, but it's Alabama, so me and everybody else as well should have expected that. The only reason Mississippi State is ranked 17th is so the committee can say Alabama has another win over a ranked team. Mississippi State's hot garbage. They ain't got no business being ranked. That's the reason why they're ranked. And Oregon has no business being ranked number 4. They're ranking these teams that high just to keep Cincinnati out of the top 4. That's the only reason they've done it. And they put Oklahoma right behind Cincinnati to make sure that if Cincinnati moves up to the 4th spot, they'll bump Oklahoma right back over them, because they're going to say they had a tougher schedule. So they're going to make sure Cincinnati doesn't make the playoffs. And me and some friends of mine were out eating lunch on Wednesday, and I was telling them that not only Cincinnati, but pretty much every team in the American Athletic Conference and the Conference USA and Sun Belt and the Mountain West and every other small conference, they might as well just shut down their football program, because what's the point in them playing? You go 12-0, and the best you can get is maybe, if you're lucky, a New Year's Day bowl game. And that's if you're lucky. You may not get that. There's been a few times these teams have really good seasons and they get the Poinsettia Bowl. So, if the committee is not going to let you do anything, even though you're really good, even though they always tell you you play to win the game. Herman Edwards had a press conference, 15 years ago when he was coaching in the NFL. And after the game, somebody asked him a question about a play call, and he said, you play to win the game. But apparently, if you're in one of the non-Power 5 conferences that they call the Group of 5, you don't even play to win the game, because what's the point in winning the game? I know why they do it, and if you follow college basketball, you'll know where I'm going with this. But not every year, but a lot of years in college basketball, you have what they call the Cinderella story. About a decade ago, you had George Mason, and then a few years back, you had Florida Gulf Coast. And a couple of years ago, you had Loyola Chicago. Now, none of those teams have won a national championship as of yet. It may happen one day, but it hasn't happened yet. But every single time one of those teams makes it to the Elite 8 or the Final 4, that people always say that the worst thing for college basketball would be for one of those, no-name, no-brand teams to win a national championship. So that's why the committee is scared to put Cincinnati in there, because say you put them in and they win a national championship. Well, then from that point forward, every single time a Group of 5 team goes 12-0 or 11-1, they're going to say, well, Cincinnati got in, why can't we get in? And it's going to basically become an every year thing, because almost every single year there's one of those Group of 5 teams that's really, really good. Now, it's not the same team every year. It's been Cincinnati 2 straight years. Before that, it was Central Florida. Before that, it was Boise State for 5 or 6 years. But almost every team, one of the smaller schools, has a really good season where they go 12-0 or 11-1. But if you're still going to be out of the playoff, what's the point in playing? And that's why they've been saying now for about 5 years that eventually there'll become a day where you'll have two different college football divisions, so to speak. You'll have one that's the Power 5 teams, and they'll have their national champion, and then you'll have one where you have the Group of 5 teams, and then they'll have their national champion. That way, the best team of the Group of 5 can actually say, hey, we won a national championship. But what good does that do you? You still don't know whether or not you could have competed with the Power 5 teams because you didn't get a chance. So I would like to see one of those teams get in one time, but realistically, in reality, we know it's not going to happen. They will put a 2-loss Bama team in the playoff before Cincinnati gets in. They're not getting in. But on to tonight's games. Tonight we have two teams that this year their offenses are so bad they couldn't score if they were on the field by themselves. But they used to be arch rivals when they were both in the Big East before they left the Big East to go to the ACC, and that is the Virginia Tech Hokies and the Boston College Eagles. And then for all you late night, Friday night folks, we have the West Coast game, which is the Utah Utes and the Stanford Cardinal. Now, as far as tomorrow goes, in the noon games, some of the better noon games, you'll have Missouri at Georgia, which Missouri's run defense is flat out pathetic. So I expect Georgia to just run the ball, run the ball, run the ball, run the ball. And if that don't work, they'll run the ball some more. I expect Stetson to throw the ball about 15 times. That's about where I think he'll be. And then we also have Wake Forest and North Carolina. And the reason why I wrote this game down is because when you look at it, automatically you think, oh, that's an ACC game. But it's not. This is two ACC teams playing in a non-conference game. And the reason is, in the ACC, just like the SEC, you only play 8 conference games a year, and then you have 4 non-conference games a year. Well, in college basketball, Wake Forest and North Carolina, along with NC State and Duke, are all 4 bitter rivals, and they call that Tobacco Road. So they're enemies basically in college basketball, but since Wake Forest plays in the Atlantic and North Carolina plays in the Coastal, they don't play each other every single year. And they wanted to play, and both of them just happened to have an opening on the first weekend of November. So I believe it was the Wake Forest AD said, you know what, I've got an idea. We'll play North Carolina. And they called North Carolina, and the Tar Heels agreed. So Wake Forest and North Carolina are playing tomorrow at noon in a non-conference ACC game. And then we also have Liberty at Ole Miss. Of course, I talked about this game back in about, I think it was July, when I was talking about some of the games that I was looking forward to this season because, of course, Liberty's coach is the former Ole Miss coach, Hugh Freeze. And, of course, Ole Miss, just for some reason, their offense is getting worse this year. The first time ever that I can remember a Lane Kiffin offense getting worse as the season goes on instead of getting better. So it would not surprise me if Liberty beat Ole Miss tomorrow. And then at 3:30 we have Michigan State at Purdue. Now, on the surface, this looks like it's a blowout, and it may end up being a blowout. But I thought, you know what? Purdue beat Iowa when they were top 5. Maybe they could beat Michigan State when they're top 5. If so, Purdue would have 2 wins over top 5 teams on the season. And then we also have Navy and Notre Dame. Of course, Navy is not good. But if you remember, a few weeks back they played Cincinnati. And I said, with the offense they run, they keep the ball for so long. If they could get a couple of scores, they'll keep the ball so long that if they can get ahead of Cincinnati, they have a chance. Now, of course, they lost that game by 1 touchdown. So I'll say the same thing going into this game. If Navy can get a couple of scores, they're going to keep the ball for 7 or 8 minutes. So by the time they get those 2 scores, it's going to be 5 minutes to go in the first half. So if they can do that, they've got a chance to, I'm not going to say beat Notre Dame, but at least hang with Notre Dame. But I do think Notre Dame is the better team. And then, of course, the 3:30 CBS game tomorrow is number 13 Auburn and number 14 Texas A&M. And I've seen enough improvement from Bo Nix over the past 2 to 3 weeks. I think he's getting better and better as the year goes on, which is what you're supposed to do. So I think Auburn will win that game. And then at 4 o'clock, we've got Mississippi State at Arkansas, 2 mediocre programs. Arkansas was ranked early in the season, but Arkansas is not any good. I did an Arkansas preview for a coworker of mine who is a Razorback fan back in about, I think, July, and I think I said Arkansas would be 75, which is about where they'll be, which is still better than what they've been the last decade, but 75 is average at best. They were just ranked so high because they beat Texas, which I don't understand because, yeah, Texas has the brand name, but Texas is an average football team. But for some reason, every single year, Texas comes out highly ranked. Then if you play them early in the season and you beat them, you jump 10 spots because you beat Texas. And then as the year goes on, that win over Texas looks like it meant less and less. So Arkansas may have beat Texas, but they're not any good. And then at 7 o'clock, we've got 2 teams that are bitter rivals, but I think this year that means absolutely nothing because LSU is a doo-doo sandwich. But we've got LSU playing Alabama, and also at 7 o'clock we have Tennessee and Kentucky. And, of course, Tennessee can score points. Their defense struggles, but they can score points. And Kentucky doesn't have a great offense, so that should be a fourth quarter game. And speaking of not having a great offense, if you like low-scoring defensive games, you should like the 7 o'clock game tomorrow night between Iowa, who is ranked 22nd, going up against Northwestern. I don't know what the over-under is in that game, but it shouldn't be above 35 because I see this being like a 13-10, 17-14 kind of a game. Anything more than that, I'll be shocked. And a lot of the Iowa fans now are having a fit over their offensive coordinator, Brian Ferentz. Now, of course, he is the son of head coach Kirk Ferentz, so I doubt very seriously he gets fired. But a lot of people think he is pretty much the head coach in waiting, and he'll take over the job when his daddy retires. But I don't think he'll ever be a head coach at Iowa. That's just my opinion. But if you've watched Iowa, Iowa has the same problem that I've talked about with other teams here on the channel before, and they can't get an offense going because they can't stick to one thing. They'll come out one series and run the pro-style formation, and the next series they'll be I formation, and the next series they'll be in the shotgun. I've even seen them on first down being pro-style, second down being shotgun, third down being I formation. And if you're going to have a consistent offense, you've got to find one style of offense and stick with it. And for some reason, Brian Ferentz just can't figure that out. Now, they've done that all year long, but they were forcing so many turnovers earlier in the season that even though their offense wasn't putting up great numbers, they were scoring a lot of points because of turnovers. Well, now they're no longer causing those turnovers on defense, and their mediocre at best offense now is blatantly obvious that it's mediocre at best offense. And then at 7:30 we have Clemson at Louisville. And, of course, I do think the Clemson offense did turn a corner a little bit last week. I did see some improvement. I expect to see even more improvement tomorrow night. Not saying that they're going to destroy Louisville, but I think I heard on the radio yesterday that right now Clemson's like a 4-point favorite, which is about what I would have because all year long I've been saying they're favored by way too much. The point spread is way too big. But with the offense they've been showing this year, 4 points sounds about right because I think this will be what you've seen the last few weeks. I think it's going to be 21-17, 17-14, 24-20, somewhere along in there. So just like last week when I said if Clemson scores 30, I'll be shocked. This week, if they score 30, I'll be shocked. I say you do what you did last week. Just give the ball to Will Shipley and give the ball to Phil Maffa and run with it. And until your offensive line can block any better, especially in pass protection, I say run the ball, run the ball, run the ball as much as you can. But those are some of the games I'm looking forward to on the schedule coming up tonight and tomorrow. If you have any thoughts on any of these games or the college football playoff poll, please feel free to let me know. Let's go ahead and get our dad joke of the day in here. Yesterday, I went to a DIY place to get manure for my garden, but they were out of stock. I wasn't taking crap from anyone that day. And that wraps it up for today's Ref Brandon and the Todd Family YouTube video. Until next time, it's Ref Brandon saying, just like in pro wrestling, life can be over by the count of 3. Tell your friends and family how much you love them. Bye.